Welcome to part 4 of the tutorial, which is going to show stage 4. Make sure you spend 110,000 in the store between levels and get the hand plant kick. Now these first two areas you can just run past all the enemies and skip them. We're going to be skipping a lot of enemies in this level, but it still has some very hard sections. So yeah, skip these two sections. No need to fight any of these enemies. Like I said, if you need money, just use the gambling and save and load rapidly and exploit the dog races, and you can get a ton of money. It just takes time. I recommend using an emulator so you can save and load state. It's a lot faster than saving and loading files on a PS2. So for this next part, we're not going to fight anyone directly. We're just going to use all the boxes and crates to hit all the enemies. At first, it's a protection mission, so just throw your barrels and boxes at the thugs on the top layer that are chasing a woman. So yeah, make sure you spend the $110,000 on the hand plant kick. I believe it's available in the store at this point in the game. As you know, different items and upgrades become available as you progress to certain points in the game. So the hand plant kick, I believe, is now available. I had to look it up because I didn't remember how I got it, but I believe you can purchase it in the store. That's an essential move, and unfortunately I didn't know how useful it was at this point in the game, and I don't end up really using it much at all in this level. Now, had I known what I could have done with it, I would have been abusing the shit out of it. And you'll probably see me, eventually you'll see me using it as a major means of crowd control, as my main way to control crowds. So all I can do here is just try to explain how to use it, which is pretty simple. So yeah, continue to use your boxes. You don't have to fight any of these enemies. In fact, you can probably just leave this area and run out the door and just exit the area if you don't want to collect anything from the boxes. But I guarantee, I would say make sure you have as much shit as you can get. You know, have all your gear ready. Because you don't want to go into another area without full roulettes and full God Hand if there's more boxes to open up. So yeah, just do that. Make sure you get all the loot. You're going to be able to skip a lot of enemies in this level, so I will show that. When I don't do it, I'll explain areas where I believe you can do it. So yeah, that'll make the level in itself a lot easier. But there are some very difficult parts, but I have some good strategies and way to pace out the areas that I think will help make it a lot more manageable. Now, sometimes when they go on the ground, you can get a free spanking in and do a ton of damage and get your God meter up, but easy enough. You could just skip her. I didn't even need the fighter. I could have just ran out the door and hit circle. But yeah, you want to buy that move as soon as possible. It's actually worth farming to get that move. You can make this level, and the level's coming up way easier by getting that hand plant kick as early as possible. So this is the earliest point I believe that you can get it. So now for this part, instead of fighting these enemies, these bosses one at a time like we did previously, now you have to fight them all at once. So I recommend trying to focus on one at a time when possible. The easiest one is usually the one with the spike hands, I find, by far. But so I would say try to take him out first. But if you're going to fight multiple of them, just try to line them up so that when you're using the God Hand, you're hitting multiple at the same time whenever you can. See, that whipped woman is getting caught up in it. And she took a little damage. I didn't get a lot of damage on the other enemies, but if you can, try to group them together when you use God Hand. Aside from that, just run around, throw all the boxes at the enemies. And depending how good your drops are going to make it a lot easier. But use the chain yanker as we've been using. Because chain yanker is going to build up your God Hand meter. So you can just use that. These enemies do move fast, so you don't always have a lot of time to do it. So it can be tricky sometimes to get it out. I think here I just used a typhoon kick because I didn't really have a lot of time. I was kind of cornered. I could have tried to cancel out of it and backflip, but it was getting a little tight. So yeah, just try to wear all these enemies down. It's always better to focus on one at a time to get their health down first. So, the less enemies you have on screen at once, the easier it's going to be. But you do have a checkpoint on the bosses as usual, so you can, try different techniques. And item drops are going to make a huge difference in how easy or hard it is. I probably wanted to use chain yanker here, but you know, it was getting close. The guy was about to hit me, so I used wild pitch. It actually did good damage because it pitched him into the other enemy, so it ended up being pretty good. Then I used Typhoon Kick to finish both of them off, so now I only have the one boss left, so it's not too bad. You can end up with a lot of shit, and it makes, you know, so it's not too difficult. But the enemies can really strip your health fast, so you want to be aggressive with using all your various tools. So here I have no health, so I just finish her off. I probably could have got some free spanking by running up to her while she was crawling, but either way. By this point, I pretty much have most of my God meter charged, so I can pretty much finish her off. But yeah, it's not too hard. It's a little bit of a tricky fight. It may take quite a few attempts, but it's really not that bad because eventually you'll get, you know, good item drops. And if you have the chain yanker, yes ma'am, kablam, you can use that to get a lot of God hand attempts and, you know, a lot of damage. You just got to be careful when using chain yanker because of all the enemies on screen. It makes it tough to get it out sometimes. So you got to try to space yourself properly and use the roulette to slow everything down so you can see where the enemies are moving. Now for this first part, you can get all the boxes and loot everything. I would recommend running and just looting all the boxes because there's a very easy checkpoint to get. And even if you get there with no health, you'll have full health when you die and revive on the checkpoint. So don't worry about having full health for the next area. So yeah, all you do is activate this switch. Then I recommend running, doing another lap, and lapping back to the ladder again and then climbing it. Because if you try to climb it as soon as you activated the switch, you'll probably get attacked and killed. So as soon as you press circle, you get that animation with the ladder and it skips the enemy. So now you don't have to fight all those enemies. You got to skip all those enemies. Now for this part, your focus is to destroy all these crushers. So focus on that. Use your radar. You see your radar in the upper right. You should have been using that a lot on hard. So use that to see enemies that are coming up behind you. Now, if you can space the enemies properly, you can get them instantly killed by crushing them under the crushers. I don't think I did that one intentionally, but, you know, it's very doable. But just use your radar and make sure enemies are not coming up behind you while you're fighting the crusher. The crushers are very easy to deal with. Just wait for them to crush down and hit them, dodge as needed. The main issue is that sometimes enemies will creep up behind you, but this part is very easy overall. There's going to be a horde of enemies that comes out near the end that you can completely skip as well, so I will show that. So yeah, I think another enemy is on its way, so when that comes, just deal with the enemy first, and then you can fight the crushers again. There's not really a lot of enemies that come after you in this area, so it's not too bad. I'm going under the crushers because I'm trying to lure the enemy into the crusher, if possible. Doesn't end up working out. But, you know, it can be an effective way to get rid of them faster. So yeah, there's only a few crushers left now. And then after that, you just have to switch all the consoles on. I think there's like 3 or 4 of them that you have to switch on. So just try to do that as quick as possible. Hit all the switches. Yeah, there's 3 switches. So just run to all the consoles now and just flip all the switches. There's going to be a horde of enemies that's about to come at you, so do it fast. You want to do it as quickly as you can. They're easy to find. So then after you've done all 3, run into that door immediately and skip all the enemies. Don't bother fighting any of them. There's a lot of enemies. It's much easier to do that. Now activate this challenge course with the fairy. And then just fail the challenge. You know, commit suicide in the challenge, and you'll make a brand new checkpoint. If you don't do that, I don't believe you get a checkpoint. But by doing that, you can make checkpoints and levels. And I'm going to be showing that trick later in the game to make huge endurance fights much, much easier. Where you can just kill a guy and then make a checkpoint, kill a guy, make a checkpoint. You can totally exploit them. So definitely recommend using that when you have the ability to use that feature. All you got to do is start up a challenge and then just fail it on purpose. There's no reason to win those challenges unless you're just trying to beat them for fun because you can get money much easier by gambling. Now, this is the hardest encounter in the level, I believe. So I would say pace it the way I do and do it in a similar way, and it shouldn't be too bad. Wait for all these enemies to group together. and throw the barrel. That way you damage them all at once, obviously. Use the boxes and finish off some of their health with the boxes. Depending what pickups you get is going to make things easier. When they try to suicide at you, just keep back flipping and they won't be able to hit you. And just finish off whatever's left here. Now see, I used the hand plant kick, so I had it at this point. But I didn't know about the launcher. So now I'm going to explain how the hand plant kick works. The hand plant kick will completely dodge any upper attacks, any high attacks. And it almost hits the enemy all the time. It's extremely powerful. I mean, extremely useful. So if you spam that move, you'll usually hit the enemy. And when you launch them up in the air with the hand plant kick, all you got to do is hit triangle immediately. And you'll do a jump spinning kick and launch the enemy super far back. And by doing that, if you continuously use the hand plant kick with triangle right after hand plant kick while the enemy's in the air, you'll launch the enemy. And if you do that, you'll launch the enemy into the other enemies. So you can keep doing that for massive crowd control and launch tons of enemies. You can keep the enemies off you at all times pretty much with that move. And you'll be doing tons of damage if you keep doing it. So for this area, it would have made things much easier had I known that technique. But I didn't know about it at this point in the game. I would have been spamming the shit out of that. And you'll see me using it heavily later once I figure it out. So yeah, get the rocket here and try to group all these guys together. And, you know, mainly want to target the large guy because he's the hardest of this bunch. So use your God Hand if you have it and take out this large guy. The women will get caught up in it and probably die. So they're very easy to deal with. So now you can just leave the level. You don't have to fight any of these enemies. So that's, you know, useful knowledge. So if you don't want to grab the boxes, you can loot all the boxes if you need items. If not, just run right out when that door opens and get the fuck out. You know, otherwise you'll be fighting a decent amount more enemies. So yeah, if you pace it like that, it's probably pretty easy. If you group everybody together and make maximum use of your crates and explosive barrels, rocket launcher, various things like that. Now this part can be tough because there's a lot of enemies. It's a long checkpoint. So for this part, you know, as usual, use all the boxes and shit to get rid of shit. But I think I use the Typhoon Kick here to damage all the enemies at once. It's a decent use of the roulette because it can be irritating to try to fight all those enemies. But now you got to deal with a difficult demon. I don't know. I think this one might be scripted. I don't know if this is a random demon. So you may have to fight this demon no matter what. I actually treat this demon as a boss. And I use the chain yanker to farm God Hand off of him. And I'm using the usual technique that I've explained in the last few videos. Where you use chain yanker, then you use yes ma'am kablam twice. And you cancel the taunt animation after each execution of yes ma'am kablam. You press the right stick up to do a dodge cancel the animation. And you do that twice, you get 2 extractions from that to get your God meter up. And then you immediately take advantage of circle to use that stun animation. So yeah, by treating it like that, like a boss encounter the typical boss encounter with those 2 moves, and then using the God Hand, it makes it very easy. So I recommend, if you have the roulettes available, using it on that. I use the Typhoon Kick here again to thin out these enemies. Actually killed them all. And I think these enemies took some damage too. They must have gotten hit by it somehow. I didn't see them in the arena, but maybe they dropped into it. But yeah, I like fighting these guys. Since there's 2 of them, they're very, very fast. I just use jump kicks on them. Retreat and jump kick. I get the trident here, but I remember I fucked up and I threw the trident out when I was trying to break boxes. So that was, I pressed the wrong button, so that wasn't good. I could have actually used that on some of the enemies. I'm sure it would have been useful. So yeah, I don't recommend throwing the trident off the ledge. So I didn't mean to do that, but it could be useful for the next area. It's basically just a bunch of arena fights. They're small arenas with a lot of enemies. So, if you have the Typhoon Kicks, I think they're useful in this area to clear out the groups. But to start off, I say, run around and grab all the boxes and throw them at the enemies. So you get their health down as low as possible, and then you see all the items you have at your disposal to use for the fight. because that's going to be all your item drops pretty much, aside from any item drop you might get from killing an enemy. But there's only 2 enemies here, so you may not even get an item drop. It seems the fence is electrified too, because I saw that guy just hit into the fence and get damaged. Yeah, it is. So yeah, I guess I didn't even know about the electric fence. You know, had I known about that, I probably could have used the hand plant kick with the jump kick launcher that I mentioned by, you know, hand plant kick and then hitting triangle while the enemy's in the air, and launched them into the fence and just beat the shit out of them. So that would have been interesting. But see, I didn't know about that technique. But since I've explained it here, you don't have to see me do it. Just try it for yourself. Make sure you get that move and just try that combo that I mentioned. It makes the game so much fucking easier once you learn those 2 moves. You'll see me abuse it heavily once I get farther in the game and finally figure it out. I probably saw it in a video and then had to look up how it was done. I don't know unless I figured it out accidentally. It's possible I figured it out, you know, while playing. But I remember once I discovered that, it became ridiculous. I mean, you know, with the skill that I already acquired with crowd control, and I added that into the mix, it's pretty much when my arsenal became maxed out. But yeah, I'll definitely be going more in depth with that explanation and showing how to group enemies with it. In the next videos once it you know, kind of dawns on me what I can do with it. I don't remember what level it was where I exactly learned how to use it, but you know, since I've explained it here, you don't need to see me do it for now. You can just try it. Yeah, so there's a lot of enemies in this area. Like I said, if you die, I don't think there's any checkpoints, so it's going to be a very difficult area. You want to use all your resources, obviously. You don't want to be too wasteful. Now, you can create a checkpoint in here, I believe. There's going to be another fairy arena challenge, I believe, up here. So, once you go in this door... Oh, actually, no, this is actually... That is the checkpoint, so you don't even need that checkpoint, I don't think. So, yeah, that was the last enemy, so you get to the next save. Yeah, but that arrow bridge can be very, very difficult if you don't budget all your items and everything. So now here's the boss. Now the boss seems a lot harder than it is, but it's not. Unless you have no items, but even so, you can get good item drops eventually. If you die enough, you'll get good items out of the vases eventually, and you'll be able to fill up your roulettes and shit. So it's just a matter of time if you come here with no items. But you only have to get this boss's health bar down to halfway. You know, despite it showing a full bar, it's one of those cinematic type of things where they make you think you have to kill the whole boss. But once you get his health down to halfway, he'll leave, and you won't fight him until way later in the game. He's one of the last bosses. Fucking spoiler alert, you know. So, yeah, so just use the chain yanker trick that we've been using of the chain yanker and, you know, the stun locks and all that shit. You know, use the chain yanker, then you use yes ma'am kablam. At this point, I've been you know, using that on every boss since I've got it, pretty much. Just about. So, yeah, you use the chain yanker. Then you use the yes ma'am kablam move twice. You have to cancel at the end of each yes ma'am kablam move because he will do a taunt at the end automatically. So you cancel that animation of the taunt by flicking up on the right analog stick to do a little dodge. And then you do it immediately again. And, of course, use that hit circle to, you know, take advantage of that stun animation, the pummel. Also, something that I don't know if I've explained, but, you know, you've probably figured it out, is when you use your God Hand, you know, don't hit circle right away to go into that pummel or that stun animation. Keep using your God Hand for as long as you can before the guy's about to snap out of that stun state. Because you want to get maximum God Hand damage before you start using your pummel and then using the damage from that. So try to draw it out as long as you can. You do get a feel for that after you've played this game because you're going to be spending tens and tens of hours trying to beat this shit anyway. So by that point, you're going to have a feel for the duration of these things. You want to try to get the maximum out of it to get max damage. Now, after all this is done with the chain yankers and all this shit, I found that hand plant kick was a very reliable way to get small damage on him, but when I got him in the air, I could also juggle him with some punch combos. So it's not a huge amount of damage, but if you do it enough, he'll go into stun animations and you'll build your God Hand meter. So you get the benefit of eventually stunning him and getting stun damage on him with the pummel. And you're also juggling him in the air and getting some easy juggle on him. And, that's adding up to his stun. So you may not even, like I said, I didn't even need to use my God Hand. So, you may not even need to use it. By that point, by the time you use all the chain yankers and shit, you should have most of his health gone. And once he's at half health, the fight ends. So that's it. It's pretty easy. It can be a little tricky if you don't have all your items and stuff. But even if you don't, you can use those hand plant kicks to pretty much avoid most damage and juggle them. Now, for this area, I don't think you have to participate in this area at all. I think you can completely skip this area and run out the front door. I do recommend at least grabbing the loot if you need it. At least break the boxes. Don't worry about the red barrel, but I would say at least break open all the boxes and get all the shit if you need it. Don't worry about getting health because, you when you die at a checkpoint, your health is refilled, so you don't have to farm health if you're going to another area. But just try to grab all the... you do get some money if you have full health and you grab a health item, I believe, so you'll get a few dollars off of it, but it's no big deal. I don't think I knew that I could skip this area. That's why I was fighting everyone. I would have just grabbed everything and got the fuck out, most likely. I accidentally left this guy alive, I believe. I don't think I realized that he was still alive. And he ended up causing some problems. Because, see, it looked like he kind of faded out because of the way the camera moved. But, in fact, he is still alive with almost no health. So he does pull a little bullshit. But, yeah, I could have avoided all this. I could have ran past all this shit and just broke the barrels. That's what I would have done if I knew I could skip this area. So, use that knowledge to your advantage. If you don't want to deal with this area, just run past all the enemies. You'll beat it a lot faster. But as usual, I do recommend trying to grab as much shit as you can before going into the next area because, there's usually something difficult coming up and it's easy to not have full items. See, I could have grabbed more barrels and shit, but I just didn't do it. I don't know how I suddenly came to the revelation that maybe I could just leave, but I did. So yeah, for this part, this guy is not too hard to fight normally, but we're going to be using barriers to block off his missiles a lot of times, and you can, of course, dodge them. It's one of the few incidences where I use the up dodge, which I almost never use. But yeah, use the chain yanker and use the yes ma'am kablam combo we've been using with the pummels. Get that God Hand meter up. And then, of course, use your God Hand, beat the shit out of him, and then use, whatever, use all the chain yankers you have available. So if you have 4 roulette orbs, which is really good, then you can use 4 chain yankers. But if not, if you got 1 or 2, then just use that to get some good initial damage. You'll get a lot of damage doing that as usual. Now you can use these barriers to block off his shots, as you see. I like to use this little nook here and get behind these generators or whatever they are, electric coils. And see, the missiles can't get through that shit if you're directly in front of it. So line yourself up appropriately to make that easier and let him come to you through these little gaps. I found that to be an easy way to deal with him. Obviously use your God Hand, use your chain yankers. By the time you use all that shit, you should be in good shape. Now, I don't know if there's any real item pickups in this arena, which could mean you only have 1 chain yanker available. So you may not be able to take full advantage of that depending on what you get here with. But like I said, you can use these techniques of... I think I only got hit once on this entire fight. And I wasn't trying for that. I just was able to read everything and utilize the environment. But yeah, backflip as necessary to dodge his attacks. They're pretty well telegraphed. They're not too hard to dodge, I found. And then just continue using your punch counter, your punch combos. Use that pummel. And of course, as soon as you get God meter, use that shit. But yeah, you see, as using the environment, you can block off his missiles and a lot of shit. And you can also just use up dodge when he shoots a flurry of missiles. Just keep flicking up on the right analog stick and you're pretty much invincible the whole time. So just do that. And you see, this was not an easy level. 94 continues, at least. So, I think that might be the full amount. But yeah, not an easy level. So, don't stress about it. Even with skipping shit, it's difficult. So stay tuned.